Story 1. My F20 autistic boyfriend M20 makes me feel unloved. How do I make him understand that I'll leave him if he doesn't change? My boyfriend let me move in with him when I had to flee my abusive parents' house. I have no other family. A little while after I first moved in with him, he said that I need to pull my weight more. He couldn't comprehend the emotional distress I was going through and that it led to me shutting down and not being the most productive. I ended up crying and telling him that I'm trying my best. I asked him if everything will be okay between us, and he said it will as long as I start helping out more. He also has his rule where if he's assigned me a chore and I've agreed to do it but can't, he won't help me out. He said that something is my responsibility once I agree to it and that I should speak up ASAP if I can't do it, but I can't predict my productivity levels. He doesn't help out much. He uses work as an excuse, even though he has breaks and works from home. I'm a student. Since moving in with him, he's started to take my presence for granted, which he has admitted himself. He spends the majority of his day in front of his computer screen. His work and his special interests are computer-related. I've tried my best to tell him that I need quality time in order to feel satisfied, but he chooses his hobbies over me. He gets sucked into them completely to the point where he'll forget to make food, pee, etc. But also the point where he'll forget I'm in the room. We go shopping and go on drives together, but never dates. It makes me feel like his roommate, fuck buddy, not his girlfriend. I've tried to get into his hobbies, coding, video games, etc., and we've actually played one of his favorite games together. But it wasn't really my thing. It made him happy though, which was good. I've suggested doing it again, but he's too caught up in his personal coding projects to want to game. Oh yeah, he's constantly coming up with personal projects to work on. Once one is done, he's immediately onto a new one, so a new reason why his free time is entirely taken up by it. It was recently our 1-year anniversary. I made him a website which was incredibly challenging because I have nowhere near the knowledge he does. But I knew he'd appreciate it because coding is his thing and he got me nothing. He said he went to a card shop but got overwhelmed and had to leave. Which I completely understand because I am also autistic. But no handwritten note, no flowers, no kind words, nothing. It really hurt, especially considering I have gotten him gifts on our monthly anniversaries before. He only ever got me something once, a mouse and a handwritten note, but I think the latter was inspired by me writing him one. It was sweet and I really appreciated it. We got a TV with the intention of cuddling up and watching shows together. And it worked when it was a shiny new thing. But now he's back to his workaholic, tech nerd self. I feel so lonely, especially because moving in with him meant my entire world got flipped upside down. I even got betrayed by my closest friend. My abusive mother reached out to her to try and get information on my whereabouts. And she was messaging my mother without telling me. I have nobody except him, and he makes me feel so sad. He tells me that I need to make more friends, which hurts, and I'm trying. But it's not the lack of a close friend that's making me feel lonely, it's his treatment of me. It even carries over into our sex life. He's a wannabe, dominant, and will spend so much time researching into sexual things to try. But not how to be a good dominant. Funnily enough, I prefer both roles and have experience from being on his end, and he is so uneducated that it's laughable. I've told him that it feels like he only researches into what benefits him. We've discussed potentially waking the other up with sexual acts, but I've never given him a hard yes. A few weeks ago, he woke me up by groping me. I freaked out. I was terrified. I couldn't speak up in the moment, but I did afterwards. I told him that it was not okay because I didn't agree to it. He didn't understand. He said he was confused because I was okay with him groping me whilst I'm awake, so what's the difference? I explained that I was scared because I was in that fuzzy just awake mode, so couldn't fully comprehend what was going on. He said he thought I was awake before he started. His apology wasn't the best. He also has zero regard for his health. He's overweight but makes no effort to lose it. And very obviously has sleep apnea but is adamant it'll go away once he loses weight. Which he's making no effort to do. He makes poor food choices every day and even forgets to brush his teeth because his main priority and focus, every single day, is whatever he's doing on his damn screens. He has a screen addiction. I gently point it out often and joke that he's chronically online, but he just doesn't care. He will pull out his phone and mindlessly scroll whilst he's in the middle of doing something else and not notice he's doing it until I point it out. Often whilst he's watching YouTube or scrolling Reddit. He said he'd struggle to spare 30 minutes a day for me after I requested it. But he can spend ages scrolling through shitty TikToks and get up easily for sex. I don't know how to make him understand what I'm feeling. He struggles with understanding why people feel emotions. He doesn't realize that he could be a lot more empathetic and understanding towards me. I do love him, and I know that he loves me in his own way. Because he often researches how to save up for a house, car and mutually beneficial things because he sees us being together forever. I need him to be better, but he can't see it. We want to get married down the line, but he said we need to work on our communication and that I need to go to therapy first. He is so non-self-aware. He doesn't see any of his issues, he's content living like this. I feel like his mother. I've considered reaching out to his mother for advice because I've tried telling him how lonely I feel and it's not getting through. I'm willing to give him a chance to change, but he won't do it off his own back. I need to make him understand how I'm feeling and realize the severity of his behavior, but I can't find the words. How do I discuss this with him? TLDR, I moved in with my boyfriend to escape an abusive family. But I feel lonely and unfulfilled. He prioritizes work and tech hobbies over quality time together and lacks empathy for my emotional needs. I'm willing to give him a chance to change. But I don't know how to make him understand my feelings and the severity of his behavior. I'm seeking advice on how to discuss these issues with him. Story 2. My 24F father 54M started a new family. My mom 53F is still married to him. I need advice. I realize this doesn't sound like my situation to worry about. But this situation is years in the making and my mom is seriously stuck. And I don't know how to help without sacrificing my own finances. I don't know what to do. I haven't talked to anyone about this and the stress is killing me. This whole situation has a lot of context, so I'll do my best to provide it without rambling too much. My father has been cheating on my mom since at least 2011. That's the earliest he'll admit to it. There's proof of even earlier but nothing he will admit to. He's been able to get away with it for so long because he's a truck driver who has always spent 95% of his time out of state. Before he was a truck driver, he was in the military. He only admitted to his infidelity a few years ago when he had a child with his mistress. And she had a bipolar episode and had to be admitted. And he didn't know what to do because in spite of having 5 kids already, he doesn't know how to care for a child. So he called my mom. You would think this is when shit hit the fan in their marriage. But they've been planning divorce for quite literally my entire life. They've had an awful marriage and my dad is emotionally and financially abusive. My dad has also been lying to his baby mama, and has told her that he's already divorced my mom. My dad has threatened my mom with violence if she tells his baby mom about this. Because he's afraid he'll lose his right to see his newest child, and also said that the mistress might come after her as well. They also made an agreement that he keeps supporting my mom financially in exchange for his secrets to be kept. It sounds like baseless threats emo, but it's scared my mom enough into not doing anything. The abuse has gotten much worse in the past couple of years. My dad is hardly paying for anything anymore, in spite of their agreement. My mom has been getting threatened with eviction. She can't afford propane for the house. The internet and house phone has been turned off. Things are getting really bad. My mom has been living off of about $14,000 per year for the past 5 years or so. My dad makes $180,000 per year. She has tried to get a job, but my dad is suffocating and calls her constantly throughout the day to ensure she's not doing anything besides sitting at home. If she doesn't answer the phone, he just keeps calling over and over again, and after a while he'll start calling family members. If she doesn't answer by then, he'll go as far as calling the police, which really scares her. She's still tried to get a job in spite of this, but hasn't had luck at her age. She says people don't want to hire her at 50+ years old with no recent job history in the past decade. I still think she could probably find somewhere to work. But I think she's honestly just traumatized, and because of that she has an insane amount of anxiety. I mean, she's actively living through trauma, so I think the added stress of finding a job is too much for her. So she could get a job, but the emotional strain would be huge, but I digress. In spite of her measly allowance, that's meant to pay for her food, rent, utilities, car insurance, etc., she was able to save some money. Just enough to put it down on the retainer for a divorce attorney. But my dad has started flaking on paying her anything. So she's had to fall back on her savings to make sure she and my brothers don't get evicted. I've done my best to help her by buying her a cell phone and paying for service on it, and buying her groceries here and there. But I've been unemployed myself while living with my boyfriend, and I have my own problems. You might be wondering why my brothers aren't helping, and although they pay some money in rent, it's just enough to cover their share of the expenditures in the household and nothing more. I'll be honest and say I don't really know why they don't help. They either don't know how dire the situation is or believe it's somehow my mom's fault. So I would say my mom has a few grand saved up, maybe. Not enough for a divorce attorney, though. If she could afford an attorney, then she would likely get some decent alimony and could get back onto her feet and support herself. But it's about getting there, that's the issue. I'm starting work again and I really want to save money for my future. My boyfriend and I want to get married, and soon we intend to take over the mortgage on his parents' house. We're on a deadline because in a couple of years they're going to retire and we need to be ready for it. Besides that, I desperately need some dental work done, which will cost at least $5,000 to be fixed in Mexico. That will honestly kill me if I don't get it fixed within at least a year, probably sooner. And we also have a lot of issues with our vehicles. So you can see how we're already spread thin. I want to help my mom, but I can't help myself and help her too. She could get a divorce without an attorney, but then she'd quite literally have nothing. No retirement, no savings or assets, no alimony. After years of abuse, I believe she deserves something for it all. I've suggested she look into resources for people escaping abusive marriages. Maybe an attorney would take up her case pro bono or something like that. But I think every time she looks she gets confused and isn't sure where to look. I've tried helping her, but it's impossible over the phone. And it's a rarity that I can drive to see her, so when I do she doesn't want the mood to be ruined by talking about the divorce. And honestly, I don't know what I'm looking for either. I just don't know what to do. I don't know what she should do. I want this nightmare to end. Things seem to be getting worse and I'm afraid my mom is gonna end up homeless. But the clock is ticking on my dental work and car troubles. Should I put aside my own needs to help her out of this divorce? Or should I put myself first and hope she can figure things out herself? Father started a new family out of wedlock and is financially abusing my mom, so she's unable to divorce. And I'm not sure if I should put my money into helping her out of the marriage or putting my needs first. Story 3. I lie on the opposite side of the spectrum here. I am a cheater. I want to apologize after 1 year of no contact. I am very sorry for incoming trauma dumps and I am not looking for any sympathy for my personal problems. I am not the good guy here that should be coddled for neglecting real health issues and essentially weaponizing that onto others. But I do believe that there were malefactors I consciously neglected that lead to me doing horrible things to a person that cared for me and thought I should expand on it to help with your insight. I had been dating a woman on and off for 5 years. She was not short at all on expressing her love, affection, support and respect for me, as well as the belief that her and I had a future together. Her and I both struggled with mental health issues stemming from past trauma. Obviously will not disclose anything more on her behalf beyond that. On my side, I have been struggling with addiction to the internet, the arousal and attraction of sex and pornography since I was 7 years old due to early exposure and lack of digital moderation by the adults in my life because they just never found out. This craving for stimulation was aggravated by excess marijuana abuse when I became of age. I was diagnosed with ADHD combined type this year at age 28, something that was alerted to my family when I was a child. They had no desire for treatment because of medication fear at my young age. Being raised in a household with a father that was continuously abusive, manipulative and adulterous to my mother, I grew up thinking I would never be anything like him. I was very antisocial growing up and began to develop the habitual behavior of a compulsive liar when I turned 15. I never experienced a relationship through high school. I didn't really come out of my social shell until I reached the age of 20. But the monster I had manifested through my unhealthy habits was still there and being of age. I was adamant, almost obsessed on fulfilling those sexual desires to the point of zombie scrolling dating apps, which was a very different environment when they first gained popularity, and personals websites for hours just to self-gratify myself with intimate, sexual conversations when porn didn't do the trick. Conversations which few I was able to act upon. To clarify, I engaged in 2 unsafe encounters before I eventually met her a couple of months after through, you guessed it, a dating app. Turning 20 when I met her, and she and I began a very physically driven relationship from the get-go. She admitted to having a promiscuous past, something I was not worrisome or distrustful about. But I selfishly didn't disclose that I shared similar experiences and had engaged in them before we began talking. However, we began to click emotionally. So much that the relationship moved very fast to expressions of love and deeper affection. But the base of physical contact was there and always an exciting thing for both of us in the beginning. During that time, I stayed clear of any dating apps or platforms and basically did not contact any women. Even good friends that I graduated school with and had no type of intimate history with, but I still regularly watched porn behind her back. I didn't realize my participants in being in a physically driven relationship. Without trying to set respectful boundaries for us both was another manifestation of my deeper problems and would eventually feed and egg on my fixations while completely neglecting my real responsibility of the relationship, which was our mental health issues would eventually cause us to break up twice. Coincidentally enough, we had each individually initiated the breakup for the same reasons. Being disillusioned in the sense of our worth to the relationship. We also both individually reached back to each other after time apart and reunited. Truthfully, I believe I took advantage of her emotional and physical attraction to me both times, which led to us getting back together. Though we did not end up going that far physically at the times reunited. We both had pursued intimacy outside of the relationship with others, but again, only she was the one that trusted me enough to be honest with me about it, and I can't justify keeping my behavior to myself despite being totally accepting and not even the slightest upset at anything she had done while we were not together. I realize how keeping my mouth shut could have painted me as a virtuous person in her eyes when I was far from it, and it's nothing short of being manipulative. Before we had reunited the second time, while still pursuing my desires and unsafe encounters, I was finally beginning treatment for my anxiety and depression and suffered a mental breakdown. Not sure if it was my prescriptions that caused this or just my general mental state. I was institutionalized for 6 days due to a suicide attempt I disclosed after seeking treatment. It was not long after that she had reached out and we began our relationship again as noted above. From there we were together for nearly 3 years and I started to become a lot worse as a boyfriend than I had been before. I began to show less attention outside of face-to-face interaction. In both awareness and lack of awareness depending on what I was doing. I was taking hours to text back and not even answering the phone at night because I was focused on things that stimulated my anxiety and depression, be it video games, porn and internet, going into the late night or even overnight, or just sleeping my life away day in and day out. Eventually it devolved me back into scrolling dating apps and personals. I did not act upon these encounters but actively continued to pursue this behavior and build virtual sexual relationships with strangers. Faking plans to meet to solicit photos with no conscious thought of stopping or realizing how disgusting it was, be it in a relationship or not. I would spend hours on end, glued to my bed and scrolling through these sites even more than before for that next source of pleasure that would satisfy me. Eventually I believe she had begun to suspect this a year or two in and confronted me after finding a very personal pic of myself on my phone that she did not recognize and a deleted screenshot of a text message trying to reach out to someone I encountered on a dating app. I lied, and it was such a shitty lie to her face that the only reason she believed me is because she loved me so much. I took complete advantage of her love for me. It was a subtle guilt trip with the intent questioning her trust in me. Even afterwards I did not fully stop. I would go through periods of weeks at home where I would stay away from pursuing sexual content and virtual gratification. This is the typical pattern I have been on since I was a teenager, only to spiral and relapse. I genuinely don't believe she reached out to her friends for a very long time out of the concern that I was cheating because she took my word on the back of this bogus image I painted myself in her eyes. It was only until this past year that she caught another message on my phone and started to put the pieces together. She confronted me and I confessed to what I had been doing at home when I was away from her. The worst thing about it is I completely ran away from any further attempts. She made to get a clearer understanding of the truth and I crawled back under my rock of isolation again with no contact except a month after the fact to confirm that I had not been engaging physically before she herself went to be tested for any diseases. I honestly just need some input on whether I should do this. I have not seen or spoken to her in just over a year and I'm still struggling if any kind of apology is worth the risk of opening a wound rather than closing a door in her life. I do believe that she is fully capable of moving on herself as she has dealt with many struggles in the past. She is definitely a woman who has gained a lot of strength and resolve over the years I grew to know her. But at the same time, the act of running away and not giving a clear and to me fully honest truth about my behavior was another cruel act to supplement another. I cannot convince any of you that my intention isn't to relieve or assuage any guilt. This is something that will haunt me for a very long time and I do harbor immense guilt for destroying a beautiful thing in my life and hurting one of the only people who gave me unconditional love and respect. Should I bother sending this letter or will time and the support system I imagine she has will nullify the need to stick my ugly head out of the grass and potentially bring back awful memories?